Well, it's pouring here at the cottage farmstead this morning. Winter Storm Finn is passing over. It's not cold enough for snow here this time, so we are getting a ton of rain. Last I checked the rain gauge, we were already over 4.5 inches of rain, and it is still pouring out there. I may have to empty our rain gauge in order to continue keeping track of it, because I think it stops counting at 6 inches. Looks like the goose has an extra pond behind one of the berms there, and uh-oh, that cow is not supposed to be able to reach into the broccoli. I'll be right back. Well, I'm back inside from helping get the cows out of the broccoli patch. We have deer netting all around that garden plot, but 50 started walking onto the netting, and was eating the broccoli through the netting. So Farmer Nathan came home real quick and helped me get the fence all set up again so that they will not be munching on the very tasty and valuable broccoli field that we have out there. Since we do have such a rainy day outside, I figured it was a good day to sit down and tally up all the eggs that our chickens laid last year, and tally up all the expenses and get an idea of how much it costs to raise our chickens for a year. If you haven't seen it before, we have a printable egg tracker that we keep on our refrigerator. And as we bring in the eggs each day, we just put a tally mark under which color egg it is. And then whenever we buy chicken feed, we put the expense in there. And then at the end of the month, I tally up how many eggs that we had of each color, and I multiply it by the going price of eggs in our local area for a similarly raised hen. And then at the end of the year, I go through and I tally it all up to see, are we making money on our chickens, breaking even on the chickens, or are we losing money on the chickens? So far, our chickens, for the most part, break even. But this year, we had the addition of over a dozen chicks and a goose. So I'm curious to see how the numbers work out for this past year of 2023. Before I get to doing the math, I wanted to mention how many chickens we have, to give you an idea of the smaller scale that we're working with here. So with the layer hens, we started off with 8. We did have 2 hens pass away, but we ended up keeping 3 of the hens that we hatched out here in April. So they have been added back into that flock. So I think that brings us to 9 laying hens. Most of our laying hens are on the older side, but a few of our older hens are actually surprisingly decent layers, at least during the summer around the solstice. They'll lay like 2 or 3 eggs a day, so they earn their keep for the most part. They do teach the younger chickens the ropes, and that flock is pretty hawk savvy compared to our other flock. We also raised out barred rock chicks this year, and we started off with a dozen. We added 3 more pullets to the mix. We had 2 eaten by hawks. And so after we butchered the roosters out of it, we are down to 5 hens, a rooster, and our goose. We originally got the goose to be our guard goose. She was going to be our predator prevention from above, having her alert our flock to potential aerial predators, but she turns out to be a scaredy goose. Just this past week, we had a hen get out of their electric netting, and Nathan went outside and heard the rooster making all sorts of noise. He went out there and a hawk was on top of one of our hens. Nathan chased off the hawk, the hen was fine, but guess where the goose was? The goose was inside their coop, hiding, rather than being part of the protector of the flock. As sweet as Goose is, she is not earning her keep as far as her feed bill goes, keeping the hawks away from our hens. So she has ended up becoming a glorified pet that enjoys our company. So first off, I'm going to go through and make sure I tallied up like I thought I did at the end of each month. And then I'm going to be transferring all of those to this final worksheet for the year that tracks the total amount for each month of eggs and expenses, and then helps me do the simple math down below to figure out if they are profitable, breaking even, or losing us money. Well, I've got all of the math done here on my worksheet. I tallied up all the eggs from the entire year, and it was a nice, even, tidy 1,300 eggs. I do know that we did not keep track of eggs while we were on vacation, so this is not going to be a precise, perfect number, but we do a pretty good job of keeping track of the eggs all the days that we're here. Occasionally miss an egg or two, or an egg gets, say, broken in the nesting box and it won't get recorded, but this is pretty close to the total that we had for the entire year. Similarly with the total expenses, we do a pretty good job of tracking what we spend on our chickens on our trackers throughout the months of the year. On the months where I didn't have anything, I did put the price of a single bag of feed on there because I know we bought at least a bag of feed every month for our chickens. Starting off the year, we had pretty low expenses as we only had 8 hens. So that was pretty much a bag of feed a month, and that's all that they were going through. When we got the chicks, however, we ended up doing 2 rounds of baby chicks and a goslin, so our feed cost just skyrocketed because we were having to get a feed that the goose could eat, and then we had, some that were younger that needed to be on starter feed, some that needed to be on grower feed, and we had the layer hens. So buying 3 bags of feed a month adds up pretty quickly. Then when we got to butcher date for the roosters in the flocks, our feed cost shrank immensely and the chickens became a little bit more profitable, at least month to month. And now for the annual totals and if we actually saved money by raising our own chickens. So I took the total eggs, the 1,300 eggs, divided by 12 eggs in a dozen. So we had about 108 dozen eggs this past year. I took the total dozen and multiplied it by the going price of eggs in our area. Local raised eggs are usually $5 to $6. I went on the low side at $5. So that's 541. Our total expenses were 742 subtracted out of potential profit of those eggs. So we're at a negative 201, but that is only taking the eggs into consideration. The one thing I do not have on my tracker here is for meat. And we got about 35 pounds of meat from the roosters that we butchered. Multiplying that by $4.95 a pound, which is about what a whole bird goes for in our area, we end up with another $173 of gross profit. So subtracting that out, we end up with a negative $27.75. So that is not too shabby, especially since we probably had another dozen eggs or 2 that we missed accounting for. I also didn't account for the fact that we did the labor of having boneless, skinless chicken breasts, which those go for like $13 to $14 a pound in our area. So even though this is more a negative number, we probably got closer to breaking even. So the cost for us to raise our meat and laying hens this year, including 2 batches of chicks, was $742.50. For the most part, that was feed. And then the months that we had the chicks living with us indoors, that was pine shavings as well. We also had to get a few new things for the goose. So we had to get a feeder that her beak could get into, same thing for the water. And we also spent a little bit of money getting their coop set up to be mobile around the pasture. So we're not raising chickens for profit here. We do want to keep in mind that we are not wanting to be in the negative or go into debt trying to raise our poultry here. We want it to be able to at least break even or maybe earn us a little bit of income. So we do sell our excess eggs locally, mostly to friends and family that would like a dozen here or there, which usually helps offset a good chunk of the feed costs. And it allows us to eat our eggs for mostly free or a couple bucks a dozen, which is not bad. This is our first year raising meat. And now that we have some of the infrastructure in place, I'm curious to see this coming year, we're gonna do a batch of Red Rangers that butcher a little bit earlier than the Barred Rock roosters that we did this year. And I'm curious to see how the expenses change and if we need to transition our flock to a different breed that makes a little bit more economic sense for our area. If you're interested in having your own printable egg tracker like this, I'll link it down below. We have it in our shop. It's a couple bucks to get this printable, and then you can reuse it year after year to keep track of your laying flock. I hope you found this video helpful in seeing how we keep track of our chicken expenses here on the homestead so that you too can raise chickens without trading your grocery bill for your feed bill. Catch you next time.